I'm into that. How are you guys doing today? How are you doing? You guys doing good? It's good to see all you guys. Now, there's a sort of a greeting or something that we say to each other every now and then. Maybe you've said it recently, maybe not. But it's this phrase, God bless you. You guys ever heard that before? Yeah. Okay. Turn to someone near you and say, God bless you. Do that now. If you're online, put it in the chat. God bless you. Do you even know what that means? What does that mean when you say God bless you? If you look back in the original Greek, that word blessing or bless is the Greek word makarios, which means literally happy. So you can almost use those two words interchangeably, that when you say God bless you, God make you happy today. God give you happiness. So that is really what this series is all about. Hashtag blessed is all about finding happy in our life. Anybody out there, just show with your hand, would like happiness in their life or more of it? Anybody have too much? Put your hand up if you have too much happiness in your life. No one? Oh, you guys smart, Alex. Yeah, right. Anyways, but we're talking in this series for 4 weeks about the kind of life that God blesses or the kind of life that God makes happy. And so we're going to be looking at a sermon. I love Jesus' famous Sermon on the Mount in the New Testament, referring to a passage in the book of Matthew. When I was a kid, I had this Bible that all the words that Jesus spoke, like it was him talking, were always in red. They called it the red letter edition. And so if you were flipping through, you had black words and red words. The black words were like narrator stuff for factual stuff. And then the red words, those were actually Jesus speaking. And one time, because I geeked out on this kind of stuff, I was like, I wonder how many, I was flipping through one page at a time, totally ignorant on anything about the Bible. It was just like, I wonder, what page or pages has the most red letters in a row, because it was cool to see the whole sheet red. And I came across this passage, lo and behold, right in the very beginning of the New Testament, in the book of Matthew, starting in chapter 5, and for 3 whole chapters, it was all red words. And if you're familiar with this passage, Matthew chapter 5, chapter 6, and chapter 7, that's Jesus' famous Sermon on the Mount, the most famous sermon he gave, probably the most exhaustive one listed in Scripture. And man, he just dropped nugget after nugget after, and it was like, and you get that one. It's like constantly throwing out this just brilliant wisdom. And I love that sermon. And we're actually going to take a look at it because the beginning of that sermon is really the basis for this series. So if you happen to have your Bible with you, if you got your Bible app on the phone, if you're online and you got the Bible tab open or got your Bible open, we're going to move to Matthew chapter 5, which is the beginning of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. I love this passage here. And I'm going to start, when you find it, jump in with me. We're going to start in verse 1. It says this, I'm reading out of the New Living Translation. It says, one day, as he saw the crowds gathering, Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down. His disciples gathered around him and he began to teach them. Jesus was always so brilliant. There's a crowd of people that are gathering around him. If a crowd of people was gathering around me, I'd be like, I'm doing autographs over here on the side, or like come get a picture with me. Like I would be thinking about something other than what he was. He was looking at an opportunity. There's this crowd of people gathering around. He's like, we're on a hillside here. I'm just going to bring the crowd together. I'm going to start teaching them. So he sat his disciples down. He sat the people around him, and he began teaching. Here's how it starts out. Verse 3. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Verse 4, God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Remember that word bless, happy. God makes happy. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the earth. Or you could say this, happy are those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. Verse 7, God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. Jesus goes on, his sermon goes on for a while, but in the beginning of the sermon, this section of this sermon is called the Beatitudes. I don't even know, I didn't even look it up why it's called the Beatitudes. Maybe it's the attitudes you should be having. I don't know. It's totally not theological and totally made up right on the spot. So there you have it. That's how I think. Anyways, Jesus in verses 3 through 10, you guys online are like, you're looking up, what is beatitude? Put it in the chat if you know. Verses 3 through 10 is a series of 8 things that Jesus just drops nugget after nugget, saying, if you want to be a happy person, here's 8 ways to be happy. And so for this series, we're going to dive into 4. We're going to focus in on 4 of those 6 ways, one each week. We're going to leave 4 of them out, give you, maybe whet your appetite. You can go do some more study and research on your own on those. But we're going to start out with the very first one today. This one's included in your notes, but Matthew 5, verse 3, the very first one, Jesus says, God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for Him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. What does that even mean? God blesses those who are poor. God blesses those who have no money. God blesses those who are in foreclosure, who had to file bankruptcy. What is He saying there? That word poor, looking at my IVP Bible background commentary, for those of you guys, that's code for a geek book for more information about the Bible. In this Bible commentary, they said the term poor can refer to physical poverty as we would maybe refer to it today, but it also can refer to faithful dependence on God that is produced by that kind of poverty. Anybody ever been in one of those situations where things are tight and you have to start trusting someone or something other than yourself? I know growing up, our family didn't have a lot. I think probably by definition, our family was poor growing up, but I wouldn't have known it. Based on my mom and dad, their attitudes and the way they ran our household, it felt like we had all we needed when we needed it. But I know my mom and dad from talking, stories of talking to them about leading a household and having 3 young mouths to feed and to take care of, and we relied on them for our very safety and security, that they had this burden, this weight of making sure that they were providing for us. And yet, their provision came from God. So the only thing they could do was depend on Him through many of those situations where things got tight, things got to be a struggle. You might be in that position right now where things are tight and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet this month. I don't know how I'm going to pay all the bills this month. Well, I'm telling you, when you're in a tight situation, it causes you to depend on something else. And hopefully, if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, hopefully that thing you depend on is the person of Jesus. That it causes you to lean into Him for dependence on Him, to trust Him with faithful dependence. The NIV version, New International Version, in that same passage says this, blessed are the poor in spirit. So it actually goes further, not just saying poor, but the poor in spirit. Those whose spirits are dependent on God, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We don't like that word dependence so much in America, unless it's for taxes, and then it's like, I've got 3 dependents. And like, hey, come here, my little tax deduction 1, 2, and 3. Like, we like dependence in that kind of a sense, because they're depending on us, and because they're depending on us, we depend on a government kickback. But we don't like the word dependence so much in America. Maybe it's because we fought for our independence. Maybe it's because we have a declaration of independence. But there's this spirit, this drive in America to bootstrap, to pull yourself up by your own boots, because we've got enough elbow grease and enough gumption that we stick with it. We can make it all happen. We can do it ourselves. And that's not so bad. It's not so bad to be an independent person or to want to see what you can accomplish on your own. But there's a tipping point where we depend too much on ourselves. And what ends up happening is we depend on ourselves as there's a little bit of an ego that comes in place that I'm the one, I'm the provider, I'm the one who makes it happen. And we start to rely on our own self to accomplish what we need in our life instead of depending and relying on God. Thanks, God, but I got this one. You go take a nap, take 5. I'll get back to you if I need you, but I don't think I will because I've got this. It's kind of an unhealthy position to be in, to always seek for independence, always do it on your own. I remember when my kids were younger, and they still do it a little bit today, but not as much. They're getting wiser as they get older. But when my kids were younger, they would try to do something on their own. And we would let them. We would want them to learn and to grow. But there was a moment where mom and dad would come and go, can I help you with something? No, I got this. And what they were really saying wasn't I don't care, I don't want your help, I don't need you. What they're saying is, if you help, I can't claim the victory. I can't say I did it by myself. And there's a drive in all of us to feel like we could accomplish something on our own. It makes us feel good. It builds up our pride, our self-esteem. And there's nothing wrong with that unless it causes you to edge out God in your life. You know the word ego. That's an acronym for edging God out. And it builds up our ego every time we don't need God in our life. We think we can get this thing on our own. We have to learn to depend on Him. Instead of a declaration of independence, which I think is great for a nation, I think maybe for us in our spiritual lives, we should actually have a declaration of dependence on God. We declare our dependence on God. We admit, we surrender ourselves to Him and admit that we can't do it on our own. We need His help. Dependence does not mean weak or helpless, as you might imagine. When you ask somebody for help, that doesn't make you weak. It actually does the opposite. It shows your strength. It shows confidence that you're confident enough in who you are to ask for someone's help without feeling like it's going to make you lesser of a person. And when you reach out for help and you ask for help in your life, let's put our relationship with God aside for a second. In your own relationships with other people in your life, when you ask for help from somebody, do they kind of tend to be condescending towards you and think you're weak? Or does it actually make them admire you more because you're willing to reach out for help with things you need help with? And does it make you actually strong instead of weak? Now, dependence does not make you weak. It doesn't make you a weakling. But it does do this. It allows you to draw on God's strength in your life. And by the way, it's not passive. I'm not going to do anything. God will take care of it. Just whenever He's ready, He'll do it. That job interview, that was for you. No. If God wants me to have the job, He'll just hand it to me. I'm dependent on Him. I'm fully trusting God because I'm spiritual. No. Dependence on God does not mean passivity. 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 Yeah. You come up here and try this. Passivity. I'll say it 5 times fast. But the thing is, it requires us to do what God has allowed us to do by our own power, and then when that leaves off, we pick up where we left off, and God takes the rest from there. There's opportunities that God puts before us that we're supposed to step into. We're supposed to be active, proactive. And it's kind of like this quote by the ancient father of the church, St. Augustine. He said this: pray as though everything depended on God, because it does. But work as though everything depended on you, because you should. Because God is asking you to step in and to do things. He's not saying, sit around and twiddle your thumbs, I'll take care of it. When it's done, I'll let you know. He's saying, I'm going to work through you, and it's going to be hard work, and you're going to rely on me, and there's going to be times where it's a struggle, and you're going to wonder if you're going to be able to get through it, but don't worry, I'm there. I want you to depend on me, and if you'll depend on me in this situation, then when it comes time for me to step in, take over for where you can't do it and I can, then I will do that. I will be there to walk you through it. It's like this teamwork thing. But mostly God is carrying the weight, and we're doing all the stuff that He knows we can do on our own. So I'd like to give you today, the rest of our time we're going to spend talking through 5 practical ways to express our dependence on God, to trust Him in our lives and our situation. Because as Jesus says in Matthew 5:3, the kingdom of heaven is for those people who put their dependence and trust in Him. So number 1, in your notes, if you're following along, is this. Number 1, depend on God's wisdom. Depend on God's wisdom. We are perhaps at the most educated point in the history of our nation right now. People with higher levels of degree, people with more information. And, with the internet, we have so much content available to us that more people now know things more than any other generation in the history of America, and quite frankly, probably in the history of the world. But knowledge and information, remember this, do not equal wisdom. Knowledge and information do not equal wisdom. Just because you know it all doesn't mean that you're wise. We're coming to the season. Polar Express, there's this know-it-all kid on the train. And he learns in that process that knowing everything doesn't make you the wisest person. It requires you to step into the circumstances, the situations of your life to gain experience and perspective. When I was in college, I was at a Bible college, and I remember the first term we started out, they warned us. They said, be careful in your first year because your mind and your eyes are going to be opened up to things you didn't know existed. But in that process, you're going to get arrogant and prideful and think you know it all. And I was like, that's good, that's wise, that's good information. Guess what happened to me in the first year of Bible college? I started getting very judgmental towards other people because I knew more than them and I had all the answers. I had it figured out better than they did because I knew stuff. But by someone who has not yet had kids, who has all the answers for parenting, just wait. When you have kids of your own, then you can speak with authority. Just because you know things doesn't mean anything. Wisdom is gained through experience. Wisdom is gained through perspective, and that perspective can only come through going through things. And in that process, you learn and you grow. So knowledge is great, but wisdom is greater. But based on that fact, I think a lot of times we get ourselves tripped over this. The author of Proverbs chapter 14, Solomon, wisest man who ever lived, said this. He said, there is a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. And there's times in our life, you know what I'm talking about? That thing that's a sure bet? Like you just know in your gut this is the right thing to do. I know in my gut this is going to be the perfect job for me. I can just feel it. I know this is going to be the perfect house for our family. We've got to bid way higher than it's worth because I know it's the right one. This car, I know this Tesla Model X is exactly what God wants from me. I can feel it in my gut. Like we start justifying things. I know this person's the perfect mate for me. Everyone in my life may be saying warning lights, red flags everywhere, but they don't understand. I know it in my gut. Instead of trusting our gut, we should be trusting God because God is filled with truth, but our gut's filled with last night's pizza. And you got to remember that gut feelings are often our emotions getting us out of control. It's our emotions trying to lead us. And you got to understand this about emotions. Emotions are a wonderful gift from God. They are super essential to our life and our living. But emotions are not leaders. They are followers. They should never lead. They should always follow. Should always follow truth. Always follow what's logical in the situation. And not let your emotions lead. But in our culture, we are obsessed with feelings. We talk, when we're having a bad day, what do you always ask? Well, how does that make you feel? Who cares how it makes you feel? What should you do in this situation? If you want to talk about feelings, let's talk about the last 18, 19 months. I feel really bad about it. But that does not inform my decisions. It maybe tells me how rough it's been, but it does not tell me what I should or shouldn't do. I don't roll over and play dead because it's been so bad the last 19 months. I stick it up. I pull up my sleeves and I get ready and let's go forward and charge and do what we're supposed to do. But it's not about a gut feeling. It's not about follow your heart. There's this old country song, "How can it be so wrong when it feels so right?" That's about the stupidest lyric in the world. How can it be so wrong if it feels so right? Because your feelings are lying to you. Hello? The author Solomon also says this in Proverbs 3. This, by the way, it's not your verse to remember, but I would highly advise you to memorize this scripture. Proverbs 3, 5 through 7 says this: "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. After all, it's probably not all that bright. Instead, fear the Lord and turn away from evil." How do you get God's wisdom in your life? I'm just going to share these two things with you, and then we're going to move on to the second thing. How do you get God's wisdom in your life? Number one, through prayer. You ask for it. The author of James in the New Testament, in James 1:5, he says, if you're lacking wisdom, ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and He will give it to you. He also says, believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. You're supposed to trust God. Ask God for wisdom if you need it in your life. He will give it to you generously. And then the second thing is that you need to read. See, we talk to God. We ask for things from God through prayer. God speaks to us through His Word. God's wisdom and God's will are revealed in God's Word. And so you have to be regularly, every day in God's Word. That's why we bring our Bibles to church, or we open them up on our Bible app so that we can dive into God's Word. It's why every day you need to saturate yourself into Scripture, because that is where God's will and God's wisdom is revealed. Here's the second thing that we do to express our dependence on God, and that's this: I depend on God's strength. That's how you can express your dependence on God, is depend on His strength. Depend on God's strength, His power, His energy. See, our strength is finite. God's strength is infinite. Our energy is exhaustible, but God's energy is inexhaustible. Our power is limited, but God's power is limitless. Isaiah 40:31, the prophet Isaiah wrote these words, which we've done as a memory verse before, but it's so good I had to do it again. "But those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. They will soar high on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." I depend on God's strength in my life. There's a missionary several centuries ago by the name of Hudson Taylor, very famous missionary, went to China and did missions and did a lot of great things for God. Very capable and very much letting God use his life to do wonderful things. But at the end of his life, while he's lying on his deathbed, he was quoted as saying this: "I am so weak, I can no longer work. I am so weak, I can no longer study. I am so weak, I can no longer read the Bible. I cannot even pray. I can only lie still in the arms of God like a little child in trust." If we had that kind of spirit about us all the time. There's times in my life where I'm so weak I can't do anything but just lie in the arms of Jesus and trust in Him. Let His strength be the thing that carries me. The psalmist in Psalm 73:26, this is a beautiful poetic psalm. He says, "My health may fail, and my spirit may grow weak, but God remains the strength of my heart. He is mine forever. I love that. Paul, one of the most prominent apostles in the New Testament, wrote like 12, 13 letters in the New Testament. He's talking to the church in ancient Corinth in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. It's not in your notes, but he's talking to them about how God is working through him and using him, and he's seeing visions of things to come. And he's saying, as he's talking, he says, but I'm not going to boast in those things because that's just going to get me in trouble. Instead, I will boast in my weakness. And if you read through Paul's letters, you find that Paul had a weakness, and it's not actually described what it is, but a lot of theologians believe it was his eyesight. There was something wrong with his eyes, maybe even a physical deformity. It might have been the fact that he got stoned to death one time and survived that. I don't know. But he had an issue, which he called a thorn in the flesh. And he says, I begged God 3 times to remove the thorn. You ever had one of those things in your life, like something debilitating, and you begged God to take it away, but he hasn't taken it away? Maybe you can relate to Paul. You know what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 2, in chapter 12, verse 9? He says, each time that I asked God to take this away, here's how he responded. My grace is all you need. My power works best in your weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, Paul says, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weakness. In your weakness, God is made strong. You depend on God. Let God's strength be the thing that gets you through, not your own, and watch what God will do in your life. Here's the third thing we can do to express our dependence on God. Number 3, I depend on God's timing. Full disclosure here. I probably struggle with this one more than any other one. I am the most impatient person I know. And it really shows really nicely on the road. Like being behind cars, like the light's not going to get any greener. I've never honked at anybody. I've never given waved at them with the universal symbol of displeasure or anything like that. But I get so impatient, and I talk to the other drivers in the car. My family's in the car. My wife's always like, honey, little ears. Honey, what you do, your kids were going to do times 10. And she's always, but I'm just so impatient. And I read a book earlier this year. It's kind of, I was mad at it. It talked about, are you the kind of person who drives in have to be in the lane with the shortest amount of cars in it? And are you the kind of person who has to, always go the quickest route to work? And I was like, shut up. Patience is a struggle for me. I struggle with patience, and I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress, but we have to learn to wait. We can't be in a hurry, because in God's timing, things never happen. At least for me. Maybe your experience is different. Things never happen in the time that I think they should happen. But they always happen when they should happen. And in my life, there's things that cause me to be hurried. Maybe you can relate to this. We have what I call a Pop-Tart culture. Everything's quick. We got quick oats, quick rice, in the food department. If you're in transportation, they got fast track. If you're going on a plane, you got TSA pre, so you can avoid the big long line and security. You know what I'm talking about? Disneyland, fast pass. And we have a whole genre of food out there called fast food, because we are on the move and there's so much that needs to happen. We're in a hurry to do nothing, but we are in a hurry. And we're so bent on getting there. But I think in a lot of ways, it kind of goes back to a food illustration. You guys all anybody have a microwave at your house? How about a slow cooker? Anybody? How many of you guys would prefer microwave food, flavor-wise, over a slow cooker? That's interesting. If you're online, no hands have gone up in the room. No smart alecks in the room. I'll feed you some microwave food if you put your hand up. See, a lot of times in life, we're a microwave in our mentality and our thinking, and we got to do it now. It's got to happen quick. I'm going places. And then God is like, no. What happens when you put something in a slow cooker? You put it in a microwave, it dries out, and even if you put something over it, it's just a mess. And have you ever tried to microwave like a fast food burger after the fact? Oh, disgusting. I won't spoil your appetite, but it's not pretty. But put some meat in a slow cooker, turn it on to the low, and head off to work. You come home, and the smell has filled the kitchen, maybe even other parts of the house, and the juices, it's just cooking in it and marinating in it, and it's so tender. The meat is so, am I making anybody's mouth water right now? That's what God wants to do in our lives, and we're so intent on being a microwave. We want Him to just zap it, make it happen quick. But God says, no, my timing is different than your timing. In fact, this is Solomon again. In Ecclesiastes 3:11, he says, He has made everything beautiful in its time. See, while I'm waiting on God, He's not sitting there twiddling His thumbs or ignoring me. God is working He's working in my life. And you know, part of the work that he's doing in me is that me not being passive, but me being active. And he's allowing my character to be built through the circumstances, because it would not be built in any other way than if I went through this challenge or this trial. But do not think God is not working because you don't see him working. He is always working through your life. And God's delay is not God's denial. Just because God says not yet does not mean he's saying no. You have to be patient. You have to wait for him and his timing. Micah 7:7, the prophet says this, "As for me, I look to the Lord for help. I wait confidently on God to save me, and my God will certainly hear me." See, that's the kind of faith that God blesses. You know, when I was younger, I was like any other boy. I was girl crazy. Let me just be honest. I always had a crush on a girl, always, all the time. But I had learned this principle, and I don't know why this stuck for me, but my mom and dad had taught me, like, dating, the idea of dating is to prepare for marriage. You don't date somebody just to, have fun and go on a wild ride for a little bit, but you actually date somebody to decide whether or not, is this the person that I would like to spend the rest of my life with? And there was many girls I had crushes on, and I got closer and closer to them. I started like, not them. Nope, wouldn't be spending my life with you. You look pretty, but the attitude's got to go. Like, there's all these things as I would get closer to these girls that I had crushes on. I'm like, no, they're not the right person. 18. Then I'm 19, 20. I'm in Bible college. A college, by the way, that said, ring by spring or your money back. That was like their motto. Like, that's where men and women went to go to meet, to get together. And I had no prospects. I'm third year in Bible college. I'm going on 21 years old, and I'd never had a girlfriend. I'm sure my parents were wondering if I'd ever get in the game, but 21 years old, here's the odd thing that happened. A girl that I'd known for 6 years, who I was in youth group with, started showing up on my radar. And I was like, you're looking so fine. What's that all about? That woman is the woman that I eventually married. I never kissed another girl, never went on a date with another girl, and I married the love of my life. And God made this beautiful thing happen. I don't know how my life would be without her in it, because she is everything to me. But that's a gift that God gives you when you wait patiently on him instead of trying to take things in your own hand and answering your own prayers, trying to create your own miracles. You got to wait on God. See, Satan will throw all kinds of detours at you because he wants to sidetrack you. If you don't stay focused, if I told you last week, you guys heard me, that your calling is your focus and anything else is a distraction. Satan is dying to get you distracted from what he wants, what God would like you to do with your life. And so he's going to throw these distractions at you, and we so easily take the bait and go off a path or try to take things in our hands. God, I know you're, a little bit behind on this, so I'll take care of this one for you. But God, we need to wait on God in those situations. God always gives his best to those who leave the choice up to him. Let God make the choices. Let God move things in his timing. If you get frantic, nervous, or in a hurry and start trying to answer your own prayers, it'll lead to a fatal flaw and terrible mistakes in your life. You see that in the life of Abraham. Considered the father of faith, by the way, ironically, Abraham in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, God promised him a son that would be the heir to the nation eventually, that would be the nation of Israel. He promised him an heir, but for 10 years. And Abraham and his wife their grandparents, their great-grandparents. They're up in age. And they're like, there's no way that we're going to have kids. It's too late. 10 years go by, and Abraham's like, I think I'm going to take things into my own hands. And so Abraham has a baby with his servant. That was a good idea. Good job, Abraham. Nice job. That's, father. I think ironically these things that as we go through the Bible, father of faith, Abraham, because Abraham in that moment did not have faith. You can actually look at Abraham's life and see so many different situations where he actually took matters into his own hands, but he eventually learned it along this path, became known as the father of faith. But in our lives, are we known as faithful? Do we trust God even when it seems like his timing is way overdue on our situation? Here's the fourth thing that we need to do if we want to express our dependence on God, and that's this: I depend on God's protection. Depend on God's protection or God's defense in my life. Let God be your defender. Don't try to be your own defense. When people are criticizing you, slamming you, or insulting you, what is your gut level reaction? For me, it's to get even. It's to settle the score, to balance the scales. That's what I like to do when people, do something. And it's funny that people closest to me, those are the ones I want to do it to most. So in my family, it's like, oh, I know exactly what to do to get under your skin here. Oh, you did that? Oh, I'm going to do this. And we have these little countermeasures to make sure that we're not becoming a doormat in our relationships. Got to settle the score. But if you want to be most like Jesus, when other people criticize you, try remaining silent. That makes you weak, right? No. That's great strength. That's strength under control. Remain silent. You want to look at the life of Jesus when he actually was arrested and put on a fake trial to accuse him of crimes that he didn't commit. They threw all sorts of wild, crazy, inaccurate accusations at him. And you know what Jesus did? He kept quiet the whole time. Most powerful man who ever lived, strength under control. And if you want to be like Jesus, try that one on for size. Try God's protection instead of trying to make your own protection. Here's the thing. If you hope to be a world changer, we talk about this, this idea of changing the world, because we all know the world needs to change. If you hope to be a world changer, you got to be ready as a trailblazer. If you're going to be a pioneer, you're going to get arrows shot at you. Be ready for it. And you're going to want to. Your temptation is going to be your own protection, to put your own defenses up. But let God be your defender in those situations, because God will be faithful. We're talking on November 21st, 2 weeks from today, November 21st at 6 p.m., we're going to have a Change Your World rally where we're going to talk about serious business. We're going to talk about how we, as people, can roll up our sleeves and actually begin the process of changing the world together. But here's the thing, be ready, because Satan's attacks are coming. They will come. And they'll take on the form of irritation with your relationships, or a broken washer machine that you didn't have any in a budget for, or you running out of gas on the side of the road on your way to work on a presentation that you were the one speaking at. All these things start creeping up. These things will come in. Satan is sneaky. He's not going to come out to you guys with a pitchfork and red horns on his head and go, He's not like that. He's very cunning. And he's going to come at you the thing that you are weakest at. And here's the thing you think you're the strongest at, you think he's not going to get you at, he's got you there because you're too arrogant. You think you got this one. What you need to do is say, God, I'm vulnerable in every situation of my life. I need your strength. And when you feel the attacks, don't try to take care of the situation. Lean into God. Try prayer on for size. God, in this situation, I'm having an awful week. I had this conversation with my wife on Tuesday. I was just feeling overwhelmed, and we were having a meeting, planning stuff out for church for the week. And I told her, I said, I'm apologizing to you. I'm not in the mindset for this meeting. I am highly agitated right now, and I'm just feeling overwhelmed by stuff. We need to put this meeting off because I don't want to start being rude to you in this situation. And she was so gracious and let that go. But you know what I did? And she actually said at first, smart woman, should we pray about this? I said, absolutely. So we prayed about it, and I prayed on it throughout the day, and that feeling melted away, and all of a sudden I was clear of mind and clear focused and back on track. But there's going to be situations in your life where you're headed the direction God wants you to go. And one of the best indicators you're headed in the right direction is it gets real hard. You guys are saying amen because you get it. But you have to lean into God. Let God be your defender in those situations. Psalm 62:5, David writes these words, "Let all that I am wait quietly before God, for my hope is in him. He alone is," underline this, "my rock and my salvation, my," underline, "fortress, where I will," underline, "not be shaken. My victory and honor come from God alone. He is my," underline this one, "refuge, a rock where no enemy can reach me." If you're having a rough week, maybe you should go back to your notes from Sunday's outline and read these verses again. Be reminded of the fact that God is your protection. God is your defense. He's your refuge. He's your rock that you can hide behind. Here's the last way to depend on God in our life, and that's this one. This is a hard one. I depend on God's wealth. I depend on God's wealth. One of the biggest sources of stress in our life is money. They say that fights over money causes more tension in marriage relationships than any other subject. It's just a hard thing because our lives literally depend on our livelihood. Our food, our shelter, our clothing comes from what? Our money, this tool that we use. But sometimes we get this thing out of control in our mind. We think money is everything. And here's the funny thing is that we begin to try and hoard it or to use it in certain ways to wield power in our own lives, again, edging God out so that we can have control over our situation. We don't have to depend on him because we got this one covered. Ever been there before? If you put your security in the bank, in investments, in your retirement plan, you are going to be an insecure person because all of those investments are not surefire. The only surefire investment in your life is invest in God for your security and strength. There you will find security. Paul writes this in Philippians 4:19. He says, "And this same God who takes care of me will supply all your needs from his glorious riches, which have been given to us in Christ Jesus." There's a passage in Psalm Psalm chapter 50 that I love. I want to read it to you. The psalmist David says this, or Asaph actually says this, "But I do not need the bulls from your barns." This is God speaking. "But I do not need the bulls from your barns or the goats from your pens, for all the animals of the forest are mine, and I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird on the mountains, and all the animals of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for all the world is mine and everything in it." Never forget, God's wealth is endless. And a lot of times we live our lives with a scarcity mindset instead of an abundance mindset. But if our trust and our dependence is in God and His wealth, then we have an abundance mindset because we know that my God will supply all my needs according to His riches and glory. That's what God tells us. It's kind of like if I went home today from church and I went to my bathroom and I turned on the faucet and nothing came out. Should I assume that the water supply has dried up? We wouldn't do that. The first thing we think of is the water distribution channel has blocked or broken in some way. I would begin working on trying to fix the faucet, right? And in our lives, there's many times where we actually act as though the water supply has dried up, when really what's happened is the channel of distribution has been broken. And if you want God's faithfulness in this area and God's abundance in your life, you have to tap into the source. You've got to make sure that you've got that fixed in your life. One of our values as a church is generosity. And I believe in generosity because it was taught to me growing up, and I've seen the value of it in my life over and over and over again. I believe God has blessed my life beyond measure in so many different areas, but in no area greater than in the area of finances have I seen God's blessing show up and grow my faith more than any other area. Being generous with my giving. When we are insecure, we hang on to what we have for security. When things get tight, we tend to stop giving generously and begin grabbing and holding on to. But what God says is if you give, I will be the one to supply your needs. You're not the one who has to take care of it. You don't have to defend yourself in this area. I will supply for you. Don't lose faith in God in this area. I've seen God over and over in my life. I saw it in my home growing up that when we were faithful, we were generous with what God has given us, that He will bless us. There was an evening a couple months ago where my wife went to Sonic Burger, and they were understaffed. I think there was 3 people running the whole restaurant. She waited for 43 minutes at one of those little things where you drive into. What do they call those things? I don't know what they're called. Anyways, those little stalls, and they just didn't have enough staff. And my wife watched and observed. I wasn't in the car. All these employees getting berated and just cussed out by person after person after person because this was not acceptable to them. These young high school kids. And when my wife told me about that, I just felt God say, you need to go do something about this. So my daughter wanted to come back with me, and we went back and we gave every one of those kids a $20 bill and said, don't you ever let these people make you jaded. But you know what? I got the greater blessing in that situation because being generous gives you a happy heart. It makes you a happy person. Generosity also grows our dependence on God. When you have nothing else to trust in, when you can't do it on your own anymore, you have to trust in Him. And that's what generosity has done in my life. It's interesting. I've never met a generous person who was an unhappy person. Not in my life. But conversely, I know many stingy people. And most, if not all of them, are very unhappy. Isn't that ironic? We think we're making ourselves better by holding on to, and really what happens is when we give away, we become a happy person. Why do you think they call it Thanksgiving instead of Thanksgetting? Because when we give thanks and when we give away, that is when we are happiest. We're getting ready to enter a season where being generous is kind of a par for course. We'll talk a lot in our church. We actually are in the middle of a food box drive, and you guys have been generous already beyond belief. We actually have gotten a lot of the food supplies already collected and ready to go for 2 weeks from yesterday. 2 weeks from yesterday on Saturday the 20th, we'll gather together and put together food boxes for people in need in our community. But I'll tell you, even if it costs us money, we're getting the better end of the stick. We are happier people because we give away. When we were buying some of the food supplies yesterday, every person was like, why are you getting so much of this stuff? We told them what was happening, and you should have seen the smiles they got. And they said, God bless you. They're telling me, I didn't know if they're people of faith. God bless you for what you guys are doing. See, when we give, when we're generous with what God has given us, it makes us happy. In a couple weeks, you're also going to be hearing about a Christmas offering. Every year we do a Christmas offering to help remind us that Christmas is not about getting presents, it's about giving away. It's about being generous. It's about doing something for other people. So when you hear about these things and there's opportunities, I encourage you to jump in. And not just in the church stuff. There are opportunities in your life where you can not only be generous with your money, but also generous with your time and your resources at home. You give away. I promise you, it'll make you a happy person. Then you can depend on God for your wealth, for your supply, for the things that you need in your life. So as we wrap up today, I want to walk really quickly through all 5 of these. And here's what I want you to do. Get your pen out. If you're online, get your pen ready or your notes ready. What I want you to do is I go through each one of these. I want you to put a plus next to the ones you feel like you're doing pretty good on. If you don't be too hard on yourself, but I'm doing good on this. If there's 1 or 2 or more that you got a minus on, you're like, I could work on this area, put a minus next to that. But here we go. The first one is this. I depend on God's wisdom. You try to do things with your own understanding, your own wisdom, or do you depend on God's wisdom in your life? Plus or minus. Number 2, I depend on God's strength. You try to do stuff in your own power, or do you surrender to God's power and God's energy in your life? Plus or minus on that one. Number 3, I depend on God's timing. Are you impatient like me? I'll be honest, this is my minus, my biggest minus. I should say there's more than one. I depend on God's timing. Are you patient? Are you waiting on Him for what He's going to do in your life? Are you trusting Him? Minus or plus there. And then number 4, I depend on God's protection. You always trying to defend yourself? Are you willing to put your arms down, be quiet for a moment, and let God be your defender, God be your protector in your situation? Plus or minus on that. And then the last one, I depend on God's wealth. Are you someone who trusts God with your resources, the things that He supplied you with? You depend on Him, or do you try to pull it to yourself and take control on your own, and you're more likely to be stingy or to think scarcity than abundance and giving away? Plus or minus on that one. I want you to work on, this is the next step in your notes this week. I want you to take one of those that maybe is your biggest struggle area, and I want you to focus on that this week and work on it. Grow independence in that area this week. And then, if you get that one and you feel like you're making some progress, maybe tackle another one if there's more than one that you can work on. Because we don't get better by coming together as a group and hearing. It's by putting the stuff into application. Information without application equals judgmentalism and arrogance in our life. The only way for us to grow and to remain humble is to take the stuff that we learn and put it into practice. So I encourage you, take a next step in this area this week. One of the first steps you can take as a public declaration of dependence, if you are a Christ follower, if you've made a decision to follow Jesus, is to be baptized. Last week we did a live baptism. It was so much fun. Alex got baptized, and he was saying publicly to everybody, I'm declaring to the world, I'm declaring to everybody watching that I'm a follower of Jesus, and though I'm not perfect, I'm going to do my best to live my life for Him. And if you're someone who's made a decision to follow Jesus, but you've never taken that step, every week on the connection card, if you're online on the connection forum, is an opportunity for you to indicate that you want more information about baptism. If you put that on there, we'll put another one on the calendar, and we'll have a wonderful celebration with you as you celebrate your declaration of dependence on God. But there's another one. If you're maybe someone here who hasn't even gotten that far yet, and you're here live with us, or you're online, and you're just checking out, investigating the claims of faith, but you've never made a decision to follow Jesus to make Him your forgiver or leader, the biggest step of declaration of dependence you can make is a surrender to God. Put up your white flag and say, God, I recognize my need for You in my life. That's not weakness. That is great strength to understand you need Him in your life. And if that's you today, I invite you, as I say a prayer in a moment, to say this prayer in your own heart as a way of saying, God, today I don't have all the answers. I don't have it figured all out, but I realize I need You. I'm declaring my dependence onto You as I say this prayer. I'm inviting You into my life, and I want to do the best I can for the rest of my life to live for You. If that's you, would you pray with me? Let's all bow our heads. Dear Jesus, thank You for saving me. I believe in You, your life, Your death on the cross, and Your resurrection. I recognize today that I am a sinner, that I'm broken, that I'm incomplete without You, that I need You. I need to depend on You in my life today. So God, fill me with Your Spirit and with Your presence. Lead me and teach me to follow You. I ask this in Your name. And for all of us here today, let me just say a prayer for all of us. God, for every person online, every person here live in the room, help us to be honest with ourselves, taking a hard look at these 5 areas of dependence, and that we would work on the one that we struggle with the most this week, that You give us some small victories, that we would take steps towards dependence on You, whichever area that we struggle with the most. Give us the strength, give us the presence of mind to realize in situations where we're trying to do it on our own that, maybe I should pause and ask You for help. God, help us to learn to do that well. Because we recognize our dependence on You today, God. knowing that a life that's dependent on you is a life that you bless. We thank you for this, and in your name we pray. Amen.